Hello. Today, I will tell you about a potential new cult horror movie called Hard Eyes. Enjoy watching. Patrick proposes to Adelinda, though, as usual, he messes things up. She had always asked him not to put the ring in her food. But at that very moment, someone was watching them. Just when the tension peaked, Patrick's phone rang. It was the cameraman who had failed to capture the moment due to the sunlight and asked them to redo it. But it was too late. The shot was never taken, as a machete pierced through both the camera lens and the man's skull. When Adelinda turned away from Patrick for just a second, he was struck in the forehead with an arrow, and a deadly chase for the bride began. The maniac didn't let her reach the car, making her run for her life. But the foolish girl answered his call, screaming across the field about how he had ruined her life, earning herself an arrow through the foot. She kept trying to escape, even finding an armed security guard, but he hesitated to shoot. Desperate, she climbed into a strange tank, hoping to hide, but her heavy breathing was loud enough to be heard even with earplugs. Of course, the maniac found her, and after a brief struggle, locked her in and activated the mysterious machine, turning the poor girl into a bloody pulp. The villain was once again filled with the twisted satisfaction of breaking yet another heart. The entire country was buzzing with the news, as every loving couple feared becoming the next victims. But for our main heroine, Ellie, this didn't stop her from obsessing over her ex. Even when school kids mocked her and her friend Monica returned from the counter, they resumed discussing the upcoming meeting at Ellie's workplace, where the focus would be her advertising campaign. She was terrified of losing the job she was barely holding onto. When the barista called for someone to pick up a large iced Americano with oat milk, 2 honeys, and 1 sugar, Ellie bumped into a guy who happened to have the exact same rare coffee order. However, the barista quickly dismissed the coincidence, saying it was quite a common order and asked them to move aside. In the chaos, Ellie accidentally hit the guy while reaching for her sugar packet and, overwhelmed with awkwardness, fled the scene. Monica apologized on her behalf, explaining that her friend was about to get fired. The guy simply turned around and noticed that Lover's Eyes had already killed 4 people in their town. At the company meeting, Crystal, the owner of a jewelry brand, showcased Ellie's ad campaign, which she had approved without reviewing, trusting Ellie's judgment. However, online comments were filled with outrage over the ad's excessive use of violent stunts to sell jewelry. To fix this, Crystal brought in a new freelancer, Jay, an award-winning young talent. He graciously accepted Crystal's compliments and promised Ellie that together, they would save the company. Meanwhile, detectives Zach and Jenny arrived at the vineyard crime scene. Jenny, still single, excitedly mentioned that a firefighter who loved dogs had responded to her dating profile. Zach scoffed, saying she needed a real man who would take the first step. But back to the case. The forensic team had found a wedding ring engraved with the name Jay, yet none of the victims matched this name. Jenny climbed into the same machine that had shredded Adelinda, gathering evidence while messaging a programmer from the dating site. She concluded that the murder was a twisted act, and a photographer's camera had captured the last moments before the attack. With only 10 hours left until Valentine's Day, a greater threat was looming. Crystal gave Ellie a second chance: either create a blockbuster ad campaign with Jay or lose her job. Stressed, Ellie distracted herself in the bathroom, scrolling through her ex's social media. But Jay boldly entered the women's restroom, announcing he had yoga soon and would be expecting her at a restaurant at 8 p.m., leaving no room for refusal. Ellie and Monica then discussed Monica's new suitor, who had already cleared her debts and let her use his credit card. But Ellie was drawn to the TV, which displayed news of the recent murders. Trying to distract her, Monica snatched Ellie's phone, urging her to focus on real opportunities. They decided to go shopping to pick out the perfect outfit and win over Jay's heart. At the restaurant, security checked Ellie's bag and found her reusable metal straw, which she always carried for environmental reasons. Then, when Jay finally arrived, her breath nearly caught in her throat. He immediately ordered champagne and passionately spoke about love as a magical feeling within everyone. Ellie, however, cut him off, demanding they focus on work to save her career. Jay perceptively noted that she had recently suffered heartbreak, something he had picked up on from her latest commercial. Frustrated, Ellie snapped, calling romantic ideals meaningless, accusing herself of hypocrisy for promoting Diamond's mind through slave labor and branding Jay a manipulative womanizer. Offended, Jay left. Ellie, realizing her mistake, chased after him, apologizing profusely, then suddenly kissed him. But just as things got intense, her ex appeared, and awkwardly, she and Jay admitted they were now dating. Coincidentally, her ex was there with his new girlfriend for a double date, which was now impossible, because the couple murdered at the vineyard had been their friends. As Ellie and Jay left, her ex sarcastically wished them survival on this cursed holiday. Little did they know, lovers' eyes had likely already chosen their next targets. Their taxi driver, a hopeless romantic, played a love playlist on Spotify. When they parted ways, Ellie wished Jay luck for his friend's wedding the next day, but upon reaching her apartment, she realized she had left her keys. Jay, noticing, followed her, encouraged by the taxi driver to confess his love. Instead, he helped her break a window, injuring himself in the process. Inside, as Ellie searched for a first aid kit, her cleaner had quit after winning the lottery. Jay sat on her bed. She carefully removed the glass from his hand but quickly hid her private toy from his sight. But to her horror, Lover's Eyes was already in her closet, offended by her secrecy. They barely escaped, but the maniac killed the taxi driver outside. When Ellie insisted that she and Jay were not a couple, the killer smashed Jay's phone and chased them into an under-renovation building. Jay was knocked out, while Ellie ran to a carousel, where the maniac casually swung on a swing before attacking again. Just as he was about to strike, she knocked him over and ran. Police arrived at the last second, but Lover's Eyes disappeared. Jay turns out to be alive in the end, but he is deeply hurt by the girl for leaving him behind while running away from the maniac. The police report that they found him in the park wearing the mask and holding a crossbow, which means he is the Loving Eyes. They don't listen to the girl and take the guy to the station. There, one of the officers shows him a ring with the name Jay that they found at the winery, but because the guy keeps making sarcastic remarks, the officer almost loses his temper and decides to leave Jay alone with Jane. Jay is shocked when he hears that Jane is still single. Meanwhile, outside the door, Ellie is trying to convince Jane to go and check on Jay. David, the local IT guy, tries to introduce himself to Ellie, but she asks him to leave her alone, as she was nearly killed today. Just then, the lights start flickering, and in the interrogation room, Jane insists that Ray's trips coincide with the cities and dates when the couples were murdered. His excuse about being a freelancer doesn't satisfy her at all. An officer interrupts and informs the detective about a BWI case, a barking white idiot. Jay is asked to stay put while Jane deals with her. As Jane talks to the girl about how Jay is the perfect candidate for women, the power goes out in the station. Jane rushes back to the suspect, instructing an officer to keep an eye on the girl. But just moments later, the guard is killed by the Loving Eyes, and the chase for the girl begins again. When Jane finally sees him in person, screams echo through the hallways, and Zach rushes to help, only to have his precious jewels slashed open, followed by his throat. Ellie finds Jay, and he asks her to look for the keys. But when she goes silent, he assumes she abandoned him again. Just then, the maniac appears and starts mocking Jay, who is still restrained at the table. Suddenly, gunshots ring out. Ellie breaks the glass, forcing the maniac to run away, and then she frees her man. They escape from the station, where Jay saves Ellie's life, but just as they're about to kiss, the killer interrupts them again. They run straight into what seems like an all-you-can-eat buffet for a maniac, where he has already begun his work. They jump into a car where a hippie couple is making love, but they immediately go silent when they see the killer standing in front of them, although he doesn't seem to notice them. Ellie and Jay take a moment to talk. Ellie says her parents loved each other so much that they created a picture-perfect family, but when her father died, she stopped believing in romance. Jay's parents, on the other hand, hated each other, so he always felt abandoned and was forced to put every girl he met on a pedestal because he didn't respect himself. But then, the hippie couple gets a little too loud in their lovemaking, which results in them being instantly punished by the Loving Eyes, with nothing more than an ordinary lug wrench. Panic breaks out at the festival as the maniac starts slashing everyone in sight. Ellie suggests they go back to save people because as long as the killer is after them, he will keep slaughtering everyone in his path. The couple pulls the key out of the hippie's mouth, only to be immediately attacked by the maniac. Jay, of course, takes a punch to the face right away, but Ellie lands a critical hit with a canister, one he will definitely survive. In the end, Jay has to finish him off with his own machete. But when blood gets into Ellie's mouth, she immediately throws up all over the now-dead killer. And all this time, you were trying to guess who was behind the mask. An old acquaintance? A school fanatic? An ex-boyfriend? No, just a random guy they didn't even know. The emergency services assure them that they will become famous. But when Jay asks Ellie to go out for dinner again and just finish work right now, she refuses. He then asks her to write her number on his hand, sweetly gives her a blanket, and Jane prepares to take him home. After they leave, the ambulance picks up everything it was given and rushes off to another call, leaving Ellie completely alone. She returns home, decorates the place with new items, and watches the movie that was playing at the drive-in theater. She reminisces about happy moments, but when Monica calls, she encourages Ellie to act, because love is a magical feeling that should lift her up and make her claim this precious guy. But at the airport, she mistakes someone for Jay, and suddenly, she gets a call from an unknown number. In the background, she hears Jay's screams. A man tells her to come to the old chapel alone, or Jay will be killed. When she arrives, she finds Jay tied up, and the loving eyes reveal themselves. It turns out to be David, the same IT guy. He explains that they killed his accomplice, because in reality, there were 3 of them. Detective Jane is also part of the group. They shamelessly share all the details of their past murders and even how they had fun in Ellie's apartment. But the scariest moment comes when they give her a choice. She must kill either herself or Jay, proving that she doesn't love him. Ellie does feel strong love, but she makes her choice. She shoots Jane in the stomach and runs away with Jay. This sends David into a rage. The detective goes after Ellie, while David is left to deal with Jay. But because he talks too much, Jay manages to pull an arrow from his pocket and shoot him right in the face, causing him to fall into a vat of hot wax. Ellie seizes the right moment to strike and lands a deadly blow on Jane with her favorite drinking straw. Then she finishes the job by impaling her on a statue. The laws of physics do the rest, and her head gets ripped off. David tries to go after the couple, but Jay finishes him off with an arrow from his crossbow, finally putting an end to the loving eyes once and for all. A year later, their jewelry company's director congratulates the couple on achieving the biggest sales in history. On one of their dates, Jay proposes that Ellie move in with him, but she makes a power move and asks him to marry her instead. And that's the happy ending. Except, after the credits, there's another scene. Ellie gets a call with the same riddle that David once asked her. But everything is fine. This time, it's just Monica messing around. She was filming them the whole time. A like and a subscription from you would be a well-deserved reward for such a recap. Do it now, and I'll be happy later. Thank you so much for watching this long recap. I hope it gave you enough emotions. And remember, if you're single, don't assume that smiling couples have it all figured out. Bye.